Pupils from high-income schools are increasingly turning to vaping as a coping mechanism against stress. This is according to a survey conducted by the University of Cape Town's Lung Institute on over 6,000 high school pupils. It is believed that some parents are giving the vaping devices to their children because they believe it's far less harmful than drugs. Professor Richard van Zyl-Smit, a consultant pulmonologist at UCT, joins me now to discuss this further. Thank you so much for your time, Prof. I'm absolutely flabbergasted at this story, especially that parents are actually giving the vaping devices to learners and pupils. Maybe just tell us about this research and what you found.
Thanks, Heidi. Thanks for having me on. So the data that we're talking about this evening is some of the preliminary work we did earlier this year, trying to understand how much of a problem vaping is amongst high school learners. And so these first 7,000 high school learners are mainly from high-income schools, really trying to understand how much of a problem it is. But what we're really interested in is why they are vaping as much as they are, and therefore what can we do about it. So that really is, to us, the most important part. Obviously, the numbers are very worrying, but it's what to do with them that's the issue here.
Maybe just speak to us about how frequent, if your research or the survey actually looked that deep into it, how frequent you have these learners vaping. I do know that part of the research shows that grade 12 learners do it more frequently and grade 8 do it the least. But maybe just if you can go into those details for us so we can understand how extent the problem actually is.
Sure. So we asked the question, do you use any vaping products within the last 30 days, which is a kind of standard research definition of vaping or tobacco consumption. And it varied from 0 in some grade 8 schools, learner reports, up to 25% on average in the matrics. So it certainly goes up per grade. It varies between different schools. We have extended this research into now many more schools and across the country, so we will have a greater idea of what the percentage of high school learners are vaping. And what we also ask the question is how soon you vape during the day. 25 to 30% are vaping within half an hour to an hour of waking, which would suggest significant nicotine addiction. We also ask, can you get through a school day without vaping? Just to understand the kind of hold or burden that vaping has on these high school learners.
I wonder, Prof, if you could maybe tell us from your research and study of what's actually going on, if learners are doing this only because they are stressed or because there's some sort of influence. Apparently vaping is cool now, it's the new in thing. Is it also because of that, or is it mostly because they are stressed and it's their coping mechanism? I don't know how that's a coping mechanism, but clearly they are finding it as that. Is it just stress related, or is it also because it's the new in thing, they're influenced, or maybe also because of social media?
So it's a complicated question, and it's complicated to answer because there are clearly multifactorial things at play here. Why you start and why you carry on and can't stop are potentially two separate things. So we know that vaping is cool. When I talk at schools, I show a TikTok video with 27 million views. I mean, I don't have that many views on my TikTok account. I don't have a TikTok account. But so there's certainly a cool factor. There certainly is an intrigue. There's a social engagement element where everyone's doing it. Let's all participate as an initiation starting of vaping. The why do you carry on question very strongly came through stress, anxiety, coping. And it's a very simple physiological dopamine response. So when you eat, when you drink alcohol, when you smoke a cigarette, when you use a vaping device, dopamine goes up. Your brain releases dopamine, feeling better. That's a standard dopamine response. The problem with that is it very quickly becomes addictive, very quickly becomes a habit, and I needed to calm down. I needed to feel calm. I needed to feel better. I needed to concentrate. And that's where, unfortunately, these young developing brains that are highly adapted to learning get, in a sense, sidetracked into this nicotine addiction, which is where our concern lies in terms of the impact of vaping, not only on respiratory health, but more so on mental health, on school functioning in these high school learners.
Yeah, I want to ask you, Prof, how they get their hands on these vapes, because part of my introduction spoke about how sometimes parents actually give them these vaping devices. Is there an issue around the accessibility of these vapes, and there should be probably regulation into all of this? You know, it should be looked at as buying a packet of cigarettes, because if there's nicotine in this vape, it's addictive, and surely there should be an age restriction on this.
Yeah, so this is a very thorny issue, and I get into trouble with the Vaping Products Association and the industry around this area. They would argue that they never designed for children, but if you look at the international trends and patterns and behaviors of vaping industries globally, they certainly are targeting young people. The issue in South Africa is that it's a complete free-for-all. You can buy it on any food delivery service, will deliver it to you. Any home shopping service will deliver it to you on your parents' account if you wish. You can buy them at any store, no IDs required. And so we absolutely need regulation to restrict access. Now, it's not going to stop access. We know that with tobacco and alcohol. But the fact that you can walk outside your school to the closest cafe and buy a vaping product is an issue. And that really does need to be tightened up on. And the legislation is sitting before Parliament, but has been for years. So we're hoping that's going to get passed. And then, as you mentioned in your introduction, there's a huge misinformation here. The conversation around it's safer than tobacco only applies to adults who are smoking. It has nothing to do with high school learners. And so parents who go, oh, at least it's not drugs, I'd much rather my child uses a vaping product, are completely misinformed and don't understand the risks. Now, I'm in no way suggesting that vaping is as dangerous or more dangerous than heroin or cocaine, but certainly vaping amongst high school learners is far more dangerous than breathing fresh air.
Certainly. I mean, it is of great concern, especially if this is on the increase. I'm wondering, Prof, if there is an alternative for grade 12s. I mean, they find the environment rather stressful. Wait till they become a full-blown adult and they'll see how stressful life actually gets. But is there an alternative to to vaping? So the alternative could be a vape that doesn't have nicotine in it, but then I guess it wouldn't have the same effect, and that's the effect is what these grade 12 learners are obviously going for. But is there an alternative at this point?
So I think the alternative is everything else that we know helps with coping with stress and pressure. The grade 8s through grade 12s, the university students, us as adults, all of us have to learn to cope with the pressures in society. I mean, the world is a pretty crazy place at the moment, and we need to equip our young people with a skill set to manage stress, pressure, be it school pressure, be it concerns about job, income, finance, safety, health, you name it. It's those skills that we use so that we don't use drugs, that we don't abuse alcohol, we don't do crazy things to try and deal with our stress. So standard coping resilience type methods that are fairly commonplace amongst many adults, I don't think have really filtered through. And these young people are looking for something to help cope with the stress because they clearly haven't got the other skills in place yet. And I think that's a big challenge to the schools, is that they really need to be adding that in addition to everything else that they are teaching.
Certainly, it is of great concern, and we do hope that something is definitely done about it. Thank you so much for your insights this evening, Prof. We do appreciate it. That was UCT consultant and pulmonologist, Professor Richard van Zyl-Smit.